In April 2024, Emma Caldwell set out alone for a waterfall hike in the Smoky Mountains. She never came back. Police called it a runaway. Locals called it suicide. For 6 months, the river kept its secret, until hikers spotted something strange on the bank. Emma's clothes, folded, dry, untouched by water. And what came before that turned a quiet town into a dark investigation that shocked an entire state. On the morning of April 17, 2024, Emma Caldwell pulled into the Laurel Falls trailhead just after 8 a.m. Clouds hung low over the Smoky Mountains, casting a soft haze over the narrow parking lot. She parked her aging Honda Civic, slung her small backpack over one shoulder, and walked straight toward the trail without a word to anyone. A ranger stationed at the entrance later said she gave him a quick nod. Nothing else. No sign of distress. No companion. Just a 19-year-old with earbuds in, heading up a trail she'd never hiked before. She never came back. By nightfall, Emma's car was still parked in the exact same spot. Unlocked, her wallet inside, keys in the cup holder. At first, no one noticed. Emma had a reputation for being independent. She'd taken off for solo day trips before, even a weekend away once, according to her brother Daniel. But the next morning, when park staff found the car still sitting there, things changed. They ran the plates, called her parents. By noon, a search party was on the trails. Dogs swept the area. Rangers checked all cabins, lookouts, and service roads. Helicopters scanned the thick canopy overhead. They found nothing. No footprints past the first mile marker, no signs of a fall, no dropped items. It was as if Emma Caldwell had walked into the woods and never walked back out. The case didn't make headlines at first. Disappearance reports in the Smokies weren't rare. Locals whispered she'd run off with someone. A ranger suggested, off the record, that maybe she just wanted out. Her family didn't buy it. Daniel least of all. She wasn't like that, he told reporters 2 weeks later. She'd text me every night, even if she was mad at me. Every single night. But as weeks turned into months, the trail grew cold. By July, police quietly closed the active search. Officially, Emma Caldwell was listed as a voluntary missing adult. Unofficially, the sheriff told Daniel to let it go. Then came October. 6 months after Emma vanished, a pair of hikers stopped by a narrow bend in the Little River, about 10 miles downstream from the Laurel Falls Trail. They were following a deer track when they spotted something on the bank, a small pile of clothes, folded, dry, placed carefully on a flat rock at the water's edge. They recognized the name on the jacket tag, Emma Caldwell. When Daniel heard the news, he drove back into town that same night. He met the sheriff in person, hoping for once they'd take it seriously. But when he got there, they brushed it off. They probably washed downriver, the sheriff said. Somebody found them and left them on the rock. It happens. Daniel asked if they were checking for prints, for DNA, for anything. The sheriff shrugged. We'll send them off, but I wouldn't read too much into it. That's when Daniel knew something was wrong. He'd seen the photos. The clothes weren't waterlogged. They weren't snagged on a branch or half buried in mud. They were folded, laid out, like someone wanted them found. And in the center of the pile, the one thing Emma never took off, her bracelet. Daniel Caldwell stood on the riverbank 2 days later, staring down at his sister's clothes. The sheriff's deputies had already boxed them up. Standard evidence procedure, they said. But before they did, Daniel got a good look. The jacket was dry. The jeans still smelled faintly of Emma's vanilla body spray. And the bracelet. He picked it up himself before they could stop him. The thin leather band with E and D etched into the clasp. Daniel ran his thumb over the engraving. It wasn't water-worn. The metal wasn't tarnished. You need to put that back, son, one of the deputies called out. Daniel didn't move. He stared at the bracelet for another 5 seconds, memorizing every scratch, every mark. Then he laid it gently on top of the pile. It didn't make sense. None of it did. The next morning, Daniel walked straight into the sheriff's office. He wasn't there to beg. He was there to demand answers. Sheriff Clay Harmon met him behind the front desk, an older man, soft-spoken, respected around town. "Daniel," the sheriff said, "I know this is hard, but that river's got a way of playing tricks. Sometimes it gives things back that were never meant to be found." Daniel shook his head. "The clothes were folded, Clay. They weren't washed up." Harmon exhaled through his nose. "Maybe a hiker found them downstream, brought them back." Daniel folded his arms. Who brings back clothes and folds them on a rock?" The sheriff held his gaze for a moment, then shrugged. "We're checking prints. That's all I can tell you." Daniel didn't buy it, and deep down he suspected the sheriff didn't either, because the look Harmon gave him wasn't just polite dismissal. It was fear, not fear of Daniel, fear of something bigger. That night, Daniel pulled up every message Emma had sent him over the past year. They were all still there. Jokes, complaints, random photos of her hiking boots, her breakfast, some squirrel she found on campus, and one from exactly 2 weeks before she vanished, a text he'd brushed off at the time. "Some weirdo keeps talking to me on the trail. Might be nothing, just annoying." Daniel had sent back a laughing emoji. That was it. Now it didn't feel like nothing. By noon the next day, Daniel was walking the Laurel Falls Trail himself, retracing Emma's last known route. The trees pressed close on either side, the river churning softly below the ridge. Hikers passed him, couples, solo walkers, photographers. None of them looked twice at him. But Daniel kept watching every face, every person standing just a little too still. At the half-mile mark, he noticed a trail cam strapped to a tree. Private model, the kind hunters use. It blinked. Active. Daniel followed the line of sight. It pointed straight at the trail entrance. He scanned for an ID number. Nothing. But a sticker on the side read, "Hunter's Haven, Knoxville, a hunting supply store." By the next morning, Daniel was in Knoxville, asking questions. The clerk at Hunter's Haven didn't know who bought that specific model, but he gave Daniel a name. "We sell them to a guy named Dean Frazier all the time. Says he uses them for tracking tours." Daniel frowned. "Who's Dean Frazier?" The clerk shrugged. "Some hiker. Creepy vibe, if you ask me. He runs private tours out by the falls." Daniel walked out of the store with his gut twisting. He'd never heard Emma mention that name. Not once. And yet, something told him this wasn't a coincidence. 2 days later, the trail cam footage surfaced. A local hunter posted clips from his camera online, bragging about deer movement near the trails. In the background of one clip, Emma Caldwell, walking alone, and exactly 15 seconds later, a man following her, dark jacket, ball cap, face turned toward the camera for half a second. Dean Frazier. Daniel replayed the clip 5 times. At first, it was grainy, like most trail cam footage. Emma walked past in her hoodie, backpack snug on her shoulders, headphones in. Then, 15 seconds later, the man. Average height. Ball cap pulled low, hands in jacket pockets. He moved like he belonged there, like just another hiker. But as Daniel froze the frame, one detail jumped out. The man wasn't carrying a backpack, no water bottle, no gear, just empty hands. And eyes locked on Emma's back. Daniel sent the clip straight to Sheriff Harmon. He didn't expect much, and he got exactly that. A 2-line reply. "We've seen it. Nothing actionable." By the next morning, Daniel was outside Dean Frazier's trailer. It sat on the edge of a dirt road, half a mile off the main highway. The kind of place people drove past without seeing. No name on the mailbox, no lights in the windows. But a rusty SUV sat parked out front, with a hiking tour decal slapped across the rear glass. Daniel didn't knock. Didn't need to. He wasn't there to make a scene. He was there to confirm something for himself. It took him 3 slow laps around the property before he spotted it. A plastic crate shoved under the porch, boots, gloves, ropes, and sitting right on top, a folded piece of paper. He slid it out carefully, It was a flyer. Private Falls Tours, Dean Fraser, phone number, email address, no website, no business license. Daniel snapped a photo. Then he left. That night, Daniel drove back to the riverbank where Emma's clothes had been found. He stood in the same spot, alone this time. The air was colder now, the water running faster. He crouched by the flat rock where the clothes had been. And that's when he saw it, a glint of metal, half buried under a wet leaf, a phone SIM card. Daniel's heart hit his ribs. He pinched it carefully between two fingers. It wasn't cracked. It wasn't rusted. It looked new. By morning, Daniel was sitting in the back of a Knoxville tech shop, watching a technician mount the SIM into a reader. The screen lit up. 5 saved messages, all from the same number. He read the first one out loud. "Don't think I don't see you. I know where you go." The second, "I'll be waiting next time you're alone." Daniel swallowed hard. The third hit harder. "Pretty girls shouldn't walk by themselves?" He didn't read the rest. Daniel asked the tech if he could trace the number. The man shook his head. "Not without carrier data. But the SIM itself? This came from a burner phone. Cheap kind, cash purchase only." Daniel nodded. "Figures." By sunset, Daniel was back at Dean Fraser's trailer. This time, he parked half a block down, sat behind the wheel, and waited. An hour later, Dean came out. Hiking boots, same ball cap, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He walked to his SUV, unlocked it, and glanced once over his shoulder. Right at Daniel. For a split second, neither moved. Then Dean gave a slow, crooked smile and drove away. Daniel didn't follow. He didn't have to, because that smile told him everything he needed to know. Dean Fraser wasn't hiding. He wanted Daniel to know he was watching, too. Daniel waited 2 more days. He watched Dean's trailer from a safe distance, logging every move. Morning jogs, midday errands, late-night drives out toward the falls. Dean never seemed rushed, never seemed afraid, like he knew nobody was coming for him, like he'd done this before. On the third night, Daniel made his move. Dean's SUV rolled out just after 8:30 p.m. Taillights vanished down the county road, same route he always took on his so-called night hikes. Daniel slipped across the yard in the dark. He kept low, kept silent. The trailer door was locked. Daniel circled to the back, a cracked window above a rusted-out air conditioner. It took 2 minutes with a screwdriver. The window gave way with a soft pop. Inside smelled like old coffee and damp wood. Daniel eased in carefully, boots hitting the faded carpet. He stayed still for a full minute, listening. Nothing. He moved. The living room looked normal. At first, worn couch, TV on a milk crate, stack of magazines. But the walls, photos, not framed, not printed like family pictures. Snapshots, pushed into the drywall with thumbtacks, faces of hikers, mostly women, most of them candid, walking, stretching, tying a boot. Daniel's stomach turned. He scanned the faces, heart racing faster with each one. And then he saw her, Emma, captured mid-step on a trail. Her head turned slightly, half a smile on her face. A photo she never knew had been taken, pinned right at Dean's eye level. Daniel stared at it for a long second, then started searching the room. In a small box on the coffee table, he found notes, torn scraps of paper, handwritten lines, rough block letters. Emma likes the falls. Alone 4/10. Hiker, green backpack. Follow next time. Nobody looks twice if you smile. Daniel's hands shook. He took photos of everything with his phone, every wall, every note. And then, in the far corner of the room, a small locked trunk, standard padlock, old, rusted. Daniel pulled it into the light. He pried the lock open with the screwdriver. Inside, a folded hoodie, Emma's, and beneath it, a necklace. Her necklace. Daniel held it in his hand, the tiny pendant catching the dim light. He knew this necklace. He'd bought it for her birthday. She never took it off. He took a breath, snapped one last photo of the trunk's contents. And that's when he heard it. A footstep outside the window. Software slow. Daniel froze. The front door handle rattled. He was out the back window before it opened, landing hard on the dirt. He ran, didn't stop until he hit the tree line across the road. From behind him, he heard Dean's voice carry into the night. Low, casual. "See you soon, Danny." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in his truck, parked on a gravel turnout half a mile from Dean's trailer, hands gripping the wheel, necklace in his pocket. Every instinct told him to storm back there, to drag Dean out into the street. But he knew how that would end. Dean wasn't just a creep hiding behind a trailer door. He had friends, connections, the kind of small-town ties that made men like Sheriff Harmon look the other way. At dawn, Daniel drove straight into town and parked right outside the sheriff's office. He carried the necklace in one hand and his phone in the other. Photos of the wall, the notes, the trunk. He waited on the front steps until Harmon pulled up in his squad car. The sheriff gave him a tired look as he got out. "Daniel," Harmon said, "I figured we'd have this talk eventually." Daniel stood, held up the phone. "Your friend Dean's a predator, and I've got proof." Harmon didn't even look surprised. Didn't look angry either, just tired. "Get inside," Harmon said quietly. In the office, Daniel laid everything out. The trail cam footage, the SIM card messages, the photos from Dean's walls, the necklace placed gently on the desk. Harmon stared at the pile. For a long minute, he said nothing. Then he sighed. "You know how this looks, right?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "Yeah, it looks like you've had a goddamn predator walking around free for months." Harmon's eyes snapped up. "You want me to take this to the DA? With you trespassing, tampering with evidence, and breaking into his home?" Daniel didn't flinch. "You want to explain to the press why you sat on this for 6 months?" For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Harmon leaned back in his chair. "You're playing a dangerous game, son." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, Sheriff. Dean is." Harmon exhaled. Then, for the first time, Daniel saw something shift in his eyes. Something close to regret. "I'll take this to the DA," Harmon said, "but you stay out of it. I'm warning you." Daniel stood. "I've been out of it too long." By that evening, word started spreading. A deputy, Harmon's own nephew, showed up at Daniel's motel with a message. "Walk away, or you'll be the one facing charges." Daniel didn't blink. "You tell your uncle, I'm not scared of him." The next morning, Daniel woke up to find his truck tires slashed. No note, no threat, just a silent warning in a quiet town that had decided whose side it was on. Daniel didn't back down. He walked to the sheriff's office on foot, walked straight through the front door, and found Sheriff Harmon waiting. Harmon met him at the desk, didn't bother with a greeting. "We brought Dean in this morning," the sheriff said. "He claims you've been stalking him, claims you broke into his home, claims you planted evidence." Daniel didn't react. Harmon kept going. "He's got a lawyer, says he's pressing charges." Daniel crossed his arms. "Let him, and when this all comes out, let's see who gets buried first." Harmon stared at him for a long beat, then leaned in close. "You keep pushing this, somebody's not walking away, son." Daniel didn't blink. Good. By the next morning, Daniel was packing up his motel room. Not because he was giving up, because the walls were closing in. The motel clerk had slipped him a quiet warning. "Sheriff said if you don't clear out, your truck's getting impounded. Don't want trouble here." Daniel just nodded. Didn't argue. He was running out of allies, if he'd had any at all. But that didn't matter, because late that night, something happened that changed everything. Daniel was sitting in his truck, parked near the same riverbank where Emma's clothes had been found. He was staring at the water, flipping the necklace over in his hands, when a voice cracked the silence behind him. "Looking for this?" Daniel spun. Dean Frazier stood 5 feet away, hands in his pockets, grin on his face. Daniel tensed. "Get away from me." Dean took a slow step closer. "I know you broke into my house. Not real smart." Daniel didn't move. Didn't speak. Dean shrugged. "I ain't mad, Danny. Hell, part of me's impressed. Most folks around here know when to keep their heads down." Daniel met his eyes. "I'm not most folks." Dean's smile faded. "No, you're not." Then Dean tossed something onto the hood of Daniel's truck. A phone, Emma's. Daniel's blood turned to ice. He picked it up, hands shaking. The lock screen glowed. Dead battery. Dean leaned in, voice low. "She gave that to me herself, the night she left." Daniel stared at him. "You're lying." Dean smirked. "Am I?" Daniel's fists curled at his sides. He wanted to break him in half, but Dean just shook his head. "Careful, Danny. You go making a scene, and maybe that phone disappears, just like your sister." Then he walked away, left Daniel standing there, heart racing, hands clenched, Emma's phone burning cold in his grip. That night, Daniel got the phone charged at a truck stop an hour out of town. The lock screen flickered on. Password protected. He tried Emma's birthday. Nothing. He tried the family dog's name. Nothing. Then he tried the date. She vanished. The phone unlocked. There were only 2 files saved in the audio folder. Daniel opened the first one. Emma's voice, shaky, breathless. "If you're hearing this, I don't know if I'm alive. There's a man following me. I don't know his name, but I've seen him before. If I don't make it back, tell Daniel I'm sorry." Daniel dropped the phone. His stomach twisted. He picked it back up, hands trembling. Opened the second file. A man's voice. Dean, calm. "Now, sweetheart, that wasn't so hard, was it? Let's go for a walk." Daniel sat there in the dark, listening to his sister's fear, the sound of her breathing, the sound of Dean's footsteps. The recording ended in a sharp, muffled cry. He stared at the phone screen for a long time. Then he slipped the phone into his jacket. He wasn't going to the sheriff, not this time. This wasn't a case anymore. It was a hunt. Daniel didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't call anyone. By sunrise, he had a plan. He wasn't going to wait for the sheriff, wasn't going to hand this over to anyone who'd cover it up. He was going to make Dean confess and make sure the whole town saw it. By noon, Daniel was sitting in a corner booth at Miller's Diner, the busiest spot in town on a Sunday. Locals packed the place, families, tourists, park workers, all of them pretending not to notice Daniel. He didn't care, because Dean Frazier walked through the door at exactly 12:30, like clockwork. Daniel watched him head to the counter, order coffee. Dean hadn't seen him yet. Daniel reached into his jacket, tapped the voice recorder clipped to his shirt, the same recorder he'd used in the Army for field logs. Still worked fine. Dean turned and froze when he spotted Daniel. For a second, Daniel thought he'd walk out. But instead, Dean smiled, tilted his head, and walked over. "Hell, Danny, I'm flattered." Dean slid into the booth across from him. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" Daniel kept his hands on the table. "Figured it's time we had a real talk." Dean leaned back, arms stretching across the seat. "You finally ready to let this go?" Daniel smiled, just a little. Something like that. Dean sipped his coffee. The room buzzed around them, plates clinking, forks scraping. Dean's eyes never left his. "You know, people around here, they don't like folks who stir things up. They like quiet." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then you really shouldn't have messed with my family." Dean's smile faltered. Daniel leaned forward, voice low. "You said Emma gave you her phone." Dean shrugged. "Maybe she did, maybe she didn't." Daniel met his eyes dead on. "She recorded you. Your voice is on her phone, giving her orders." Dean's jaw twitched. Daniel leaned in closer. "I'm going to play that recording for every news station in the state, every cop who still gives a damn, and every family in this town." Dean's eyes darkened. "Careful, boy. You're on thin ice." Daniel didn't blink. "So are you." The silence stretched. Then, finally, Dean leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. "I didn't kill her." Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. Dean gave a slow, thin smile. "I just helped her disappear." Daniel felt the diner go silent around him, or maybe it was just in his head. Dean shook his head slowly. "You think you're the only one who knows how to play this game? You think anyone's going to believe you, after what I've got on tape?" Daniel stared at him. "What tape?" Dean smiled wider. "Walked right into my house, remember? Didn't know I had cameras?" Daniel's blood turned cold. Dean patted the table. "I've got you on tape, breaking in, stealing, looking real unhinged." Daniel clenched his fists under the table. Dean leaned back. "So maybe you just lost it, huh? Maybe you're the one who snapped after your little sister ran off?" Daniel stared at him, held the eye contact until Dean's smile faded. Then he said quietly, "That recorder's been on since you sat down." Dean blinked. Daniel kept his voice steady. "And you just admitted you helped Emma disappear. Right here, in front of everyone." Dean's face paled. Daniel stood slowly. People at the nearby tables had gone quiet, eyes flicking between them. Dean sat frozen. Daniel looked down at him. "See you soon." "Dean?" Daniel walked out of the diner, heart pounding. He didn't have everything, but now he had enough, and Dean knew it. Daniel expected blowback. He didn't expect it to come that fast. By sundown, his motel room was trashed. The door hung off one hinge, the mattress slashed open, his backpack emptied, clothes, notes, the voice recorder, all gone. And on the wall, scrawled in thick black marker, "Walk away." Daniel stood in the doorway, fists clenched at his sides. Dean hadn't even tried to hide it. This wasn't a threat. It was a message. Dean wasn't afraid of the law. He wasn't afraid of Daniel. And worst of all, he didn't think Daniel could do a damn thing about it. Daniel spent the next 3 hours driving every back road out of town. He stopped at the one place he figured no one would look, the old ranger station by the southern trailhead, abandoned for years, half the windows busted out. He parked behind it, killed the headlights, and sat in the dark. His hands shook as he pulled out Emma's phone. The audio file still sat open on the screen. Her voice, her fear. Daniel closed his eyes. This wasn't over. Not yet. At 2 a.m., Daniel's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered on instinct. Dean's voice crackled through the line. "You should have left when you had the chance, Danny boy." Daniel stayed silent. Dean chuckled softly. "Don't worry. I'll make sure they find your truck down by the river. You know, where they found her clothes." The line went dead. Daniel's heart slammed into his chest. He grabbed the keys, bolted for the door, but stopped cold at the sound of tires crunching gravel outside. Headlights flared through the busted window. A truck. Dean's SUV. Daniel ducked behind the doorway, heartbeat roaring in his ears. He heard the engine idle. A door opened. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Daniel slid his hand into his jacket, fingers wrapping around the pocket knife he'd carried since boot camp. He waited. Breath shallow. Dean's voice floated in through the open door. Low, amused. "You got guts, Danny. I'll give you that." Daniel stayed silent. Footsteps circled the porch. "You want me to say it?" Dean called. "You want me to tell you what happened to her?" Daniel's pulse hammered. Footsteps moved closer. "Why don't you come out here and ask me like a man?" Daniel tightened his grip on the knife. He could almost hear Emma's voice in his head. "Don't be stupid, Danny." He stayed still. After a long moment, the footsteps stopped. Dean laughed softly. "Didn't think so." Daniel heard the door slam shut, and the SUV roll away into the night. He stood there, shaking, until the engine noise disappeared. Daniel knew 2 things for sure. Dean wasn't going to stop, and the next time, he wouldn't be bluffing. By sunrise, Daniel wasn't hiding anymore. He left the ranger station behind and drove straight into town. Not to the sheriff, not to Dean's place. He went to the one person who hadn't lied to him yet. Maya Lewis, 28, waitress at Miller's Diner. She'd been there the day Dean slipped, sitting 3 tables away. Daniel hadn't planned on dragging her into this, but now he needed a witness. When he walked into the diner, Maya met him with a wary glance. "Don't bring this here," she said quietly. Daniel slid into the booth across from her. "I just need 5 minutes." Maya looked around, then nodded once. He pulled out his phone, played her the audio from the diner. Dean's voice filled the space between them. "I didn't kill her. I just helped her disappear." Maya's eyes widened. She listened all the way through. When it ended, she whispered, "You recorded that?" Daniel nodded. Maya bit her lip, shook her head. "Jesus." Then, after a long pause, she leaned forward. "There's something you should know." Daniel stayed still. Maya glanced over her shoulder, dropped her voice even lower. "A couple months ago, Dean was in here, late shift. He was talking to this guy, real quiet, about a tackle box, said it had her stuff in it." Daniel's blood turned cold. Maya nodded. "He said if anybody came asking questions, he'd take it back to the river. Said nobody'd find it twice." Daniel swallowed hard. "Did you tell anyone?" Maya shook her head fast. "No, and I'm not getting involved. I'm sorry, but I've got kids." Daniel nodded. "I get it." He left the diner without another word. By noon, he was standing alone at the riverbank, the same bend where Emma's clothes had been found. The water moved slower now, fall currents dropping. Daniel scanned the shoreline, checked every inch of the rocks. Nothing. Then he saw it, a half-buried tackle box wedged under a cluster of roots, rust creeping along the edges. Lock snapped clean open. Daniel crouched, hands trembling as he pulled it free. Inside, Emma's phone charger, her favorite bracelet, the one missing from the clothes pile, a folded slip of paper, and under that, a blood-stained piece of her hoodie. Daniel stared at it, heart hammering. He unfolded the paper, a single sentence scrawled in rough block letters. She didn't get far. Daniel stood there, hands shaking, eyes burning. He didn't know if the blood was Emma's, didn't know how this would end. But he knew one thing. This was the proof Dean never thought anyone would find. He took photos of everything, packed the box, and called the one person who couldn't ignore it now. Sheriff Harmon answered on the second ring. Daniel's voice was flat. "I've got your evidence, and I've got your witness. Meet me at the river, or I'm calling the feds." Harmon didn't argue. An hour later, the sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop on the dirt road. Harmon got out, hands at his sides. Daniel stood waiting, the tackle box at his feet. He didn't say a word, just opened it, let Harmon see everything. The blood, the note, the bracelet. Sheriff Harmon stared down at the contents of the tackle box. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The river whispered behind them, slow, steady, cold. Finally, Harmon let out a breath. "Where'd you find this?" Daniel's voice was even. "Right where Dean said it would be." Harmon nodded slowly. Then, he did something Daniel didn't expect. He reached for his radio. "Unit 12, I need eyes on Dean Fraser. Bring him in. Now." Static cracked back. "Copy. Fraser just pulled into Miller's diner." Harmon met Daniel's eyes. "You're coming with me." 15 minutes later, Daniel stood outside Miller's diner, arms crossed. Sheriff Harmon stepped through the door first, hand on his belt, eyes scanning. Dean sat at the counter, nursing a coffee like nothing was wrong. He turned, smiled. "Well, Sheriff, didn't expect you to come down yourself." Harmon didn't smile back. "On your feet, Dean." Dean blinked, a slow, mocking expression. "Yeah? And what's the charge?" Daniel stepped inside behind Harmon. Dean's eyes flicked to him. The smile vanished. Harmon spoke flat. "Obstruction, tampering with evidence. We'll see where it goes from there." For a second, Dean just sat there. Then he stood, hands in his pockets, and that's when Daniel saw it. The glint of metal. Dean moved fast, faster than Daniel thought possible. His hand shot out, pulling a knife from his jacket. Harmon reached for his holster. Too late. Dean lunged. A single shot echoed through the diner. Dean crumpled to the floor, the knife clattering beside him. Harmon stood over him, gun still raised. The whole diner froze. Daniel stared down at Dean, the man who'd terrorized his sister, tormented his family, laid out on the floor in a pool of his own making. It ended like that, not with a courtroom, not with a confession, with a bullet and a body. Outside, the crowd gathered fast, locals whispering, phones snapping pictures. Daniel didn't care. He stood there, staring at the body, until Harmon finally spoke. "You did what you came here to do." Daniel shook his head. "Number I came to bring Emma home." Harmon nodded once, then walked away. That night, Daniel returned to the riverbank, the place where it all started. He carried the tackle box in one hand, Emma's necklace in the other. He crouched by the water's edge, laid the necklace down on the same flat rock where her clothes had been found. The current whispered against the stones. Daniel whispered back, "I'm sorry I wasn't there." He stood there for a long time, watching the river flow past, letting the silence settle. The case would stay open. The headlines would come and go. But Emma's story wasn't about the case. It was about the truth and the cost of letting it go unheard.